appreciate it. And today's topic, I think, extremely topical when we look at the landscape of 2019 and cyber attacks. Threat actors really ramped up the damage and some of the sophistication of their attacks. So as Max mentioned, we're going to be talking about Unitrends from both a backup and a recovery standpoint, as well as some complementary security tools. But I wanted to take a moment to kind of recap and hash out, what did ransomware look like over the last year or so, and what are some of the predictions among cybersecurity experts as far as where things are going and what we need to be prepared for. When it comes to prevention and recovery, we're going to talk about Unitrend's proactive monitoring and anomaly detection, the ability to instantly recover mission-critical workloads, the ability to automate the certification of your backups as Unitrends is creating and taking those backups, as well as in the event of a full-scale or a larger disaster or outage, our white glove disaster recovery as a service. So as Max said, we are jam-packed, so let's jump right in and get started. But before we dive into the content here, there was a promotion that our team wanted to extend to everyone. And again, thinking that security really should be top of mind for all of our users in 2020. For this month, for the month of February, you can take advantage of a great bundle, Unitrend Security Manager and our dark web ID scanning for just $45,000, a bundle offering there. Really two great tools, really nice complementary pieces. And the Unitrend Security Manager is one piece that we're going to be diving in on a little bit later as we talk about kind of detection here. But the dark web ID, a fantastic tool from our friends at ID Agent, understanding and revealing which of your users may have compromised credentials, PII, passwords that are available for sale on the dark web, and the Unitrend Security Manager tool, really an internal threat detection tool. And again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we move forward here. But looking at today's ransomware landscape, I think that we've seen a rise in targeted, sophisticated attacks. And I pulled this from Sophos Labs' threat report of last year here. And just as an example, a lot of these variants of ransomware are targeting specific organizations within a certain segment. Robinhood, for example, that third column from the right, was carefully targeted, and when ethical hackers reverse engineered that particular strain of malware, there were indicators, because the ransomware itself did not spread to other machines, it indicated that in the case of the Baltimore ransomware attack, really significant back in the spring of last year, the threat actors had prior administrative access for weeks, if not months, installing certain components on targeted systems. And when the script was actually executed, that particular ransomware was looking to disable a number of Windows services, backup agents, VSS writers. We've seen a number of these that, as they're getting more sophisticated and attempting to close potential loopholes for recovery, will spend time stealing credentials and making its way across the network looking for common repositories. There are a number of users and kind of horror stories that we've heard, folks leveraging a Windows-based solution where the backup repository was either encrypted or even worse, the malware had deleted the backups right off of the customer's storage. So they're looking to really eliminate the ability for recovery. We're going to talk about some of the hardening that's gone into the Unitrends platform to help prevent this. But I think one of the scariest revelations is all the way in the right there. Ransomware as a service, and just one example from GandCrab, or with that particular variant, for a small split of any profits collected, I believe it's something like a 70-30 split, you can receive the code to start launching your own attacks. You're receiving regular updates, tech support from those developers. For every ransom that particular organization collects, they pay the developers 30%. They're keeping about 70%. So it's becoming even harder to source, some of the origins of these codes, trace them back to significant criminal organizations. And it also means that other actors looking to get into a really profitable form of criminal activity, the overall damage from ransomware and malware attacks exceeds the global illegal drug trade market, estimated at about $6 trillion. You don't need extensive coding experience. You don't need to be an expert in PowerShell or something like that. You can get a kit and start executing attacks, and for a small fee, let them support the malware. And if you launch an attack, the end user is able to recover. They report that back. They get a new variation of a zero-day threat, really making it difficult and increasing the risk for a lot of organizations that are out there. So what we're expecting this year, a number of trends and some of these sufficiently scary. Certainly the frequency of attacks they expect to rise. On average, in 2019, a ransomware attack was launched every 14 seconds. Over the next year or so, they're estimating that that's going to increase in frequency by almost 30%, launching an attack almost every 11 seconds. They're also predicting that AI, as we're using it in cyber defense, is also going to play a role in cyber attack. And one of the kind of interesting trends that they pointed out was leveraging machine learning, A/B testing to optimize phishing campaigns, automatically generate landing pages, and really test and deliver more effective penetration techniques. Phishing and email are the number one vector and attack vector. So really scary. And as we're learning from a defense standpoint, some of the characteristics and signs that would indicate malware or anomalous activity, there are newer variants and even some studies late last year where the malware is using obfuscation techniques. They recognize now that they're leaving traces that are detectable, find ways to almost create a red herring, if you will, and kind of disguise their primary interest or their primary actions. The folks at ThreatPost, and where they're referencing from IBM and security experts at Cisco, also estimate or are predicting that criminals are going to shift focus to smaller organizations. Attacking against a bank, for example, a larger entity, may require a number of parties. They're developing particular Trojans. So as they're looking to shift and really optimize and automate these campaigns, they're also looking to target smaller organizations. There's less sharing of the profits, less number of individuals needed to come in and execute those attacks, and in some cases there's less complexity as well. And when we mentioned, email and phishing, mobile will become a primary phishing vector for attacks. IoT and BYOD devices represent significant risk, as well as the adoption of 5G infrastructure we expect to begin in earnest over the next couple of months. So just a couple of different things to think about. It goes beyond just your firewall, your antivirus, your backup. User education is critically important as well. Some of this awareness training and making sure that not only are we keeping up with technologies, but we're also keeping pace with people and process. So hopefully folks are not, overly scared, but I think that it's important before we dive into Unitrends, have confidence that your data is being protected by Unitrends. We've got a number of case studies published on unitrends.com, a number of our users that have successfully recovered from ransomware attacks, from school districts to engineering or manufacturing plants. We've found a home with a number of different industry verticals, organizations of varying sizes. So there are a lot of cases, IT professionals like yourselves, Unitrends users, that have been that these threats or these attacks have been a reality, but it's been something that they've been able to leverage their Unitrends appliance or their Unitrends solution successfully to overcome and restore operations. Exco Engineering, for example, on the right there, restored a file server that served up their main manufacturing floor. It was about 3 terabytes of data, over 2 million unique files. They had that back up and running within under 18 hours after the infection was detected. Previously, as Erica Reyes, their director, had told us, if they were still leveraging their LTO solution, they would have been down for days, if not potentially a week or longer. They didn't have a tremendous amount of confidence with the LTO tape solution that they were using before they implemented Unitrends. So again, have confidence that you've selected a vendor that's really put a lot of care and hardening into their appliance. So from a prevention standpoint, we're arming our customers really in 3 key ways. The first is Unitrends is built on a hardened Linux kernel. So you've got a CentOS kernel, and some of that hardening has to deal with how we've architected out the storage partitions. We are leveraging, or you're leveraging, an immutable storage repository. The backups are, once written to the backup repository, are not going to be written to. They are read-only. So once the backup is written, it will not be changed from the appliance. This share as well is not a commonly accessible network share or direct attached storage. Stolen administrative credentials typically will not provide users or threat actors access to this repository. You do want to ensure that you're following general best practices, such as changing the root user password. That Linux advantage also is frequently less targeted. The majority of variants and the largest addressable market out there is Windows. They're spending a lot of time and a lot of focus writing code to go after Windows-based systems, file extensions, disable certain services. So Linux, not to say that Linux and Mac OS and some of the other less common ones aren't potentially targets, but from what we've seen historically, they're targeted significantly less frequency. So have confidence that you've got a hardened Linux kernel that is less targeted, and the backups, once written to the repository, are not going to be changed. Ransomware binary contained within, say, a new backup file, for example, is not going to be executing against the files or the file extensions that Unitrends has already written to the repository. Now, on the front end, there's a predictive analytics engine equipped with every Unitrends appliance, whether you're running Unitrends Free or Unitrends Enterprise Plus. And what this engine does is it establishes baseline patterns of behavior for the clients across your network that Unitrends is protecting. We'll understand, and we're looking at things such as the rates of change, the overall randomness or the entropy of the data, characteristics that are systematic of customers that we've worked with that have shown certain tells or signs that they've been infected by ransomware or some other aggressive or other malicious activity. Very, very aggressive rewrites, large influxes of randomized data, all patterns that will be picked up by the appliance. And it triggers an alert through our UI dashboards, email alerting, trap notifications, so that it can take the steps to correctly investigate, quarantine that machine if necessary, disconnect it from the network, and then find a clean point of restore. Not only does this alert identify when the anomalies were first detected and any updates as we continue to detect anomalies, but recovery assurance, the ability to automate the certification of your backups at the application level, is really what's driving confidence for Unitrends users in their ability to restore. So that alert, for example, would look something like this, and you'd see it right in the top right of your dashboard here, a warning from the predictive analytics engine. In this case, there's a particular system as it pertains to this demo that's been intacted, our Burl Sales SQL. It's a SQL instance running on top of VMware. But the alert also identifies that on the morning of February 5th, so just this morning, we detected anomalous activity. This could be symptomatic of ransomware. So the first alert was was released on this day at 3 a.m., and it was updated at 3 a.m. during the process while we were taking a backup. So keeping that in mind, we're hopping into our Unitrends system here, and this dashboard should look familiar for our users. Now, we're looking for a clean point of restore, and our warning sign indicated that the backup that was taken this morning around 3 a.m. is showing potentially signs of infection. When you're coming into your recovery catalog, we can browse back through and find a usable point of restore. So as we're looking at the options for that particular machine, and I'll zoom in here, we've got a number of recovery points that we can choose from, but the alert was first detected around the process of creating this backup here. So we're thinking that the backup that was taken at 9 a.m. Potentially is also showing signs of infection. We may want to choose to roll back to our most recent incremental or an incremental that's further in time. You can view this not only from the backup catalog, but also within your reports. When you come into the backup history, we're going to see history of all of the backups that have been taken. So we're looking at our date range just of this week here, and if you're leveraging Unitrends Recovery Assurance, we can find a backup that has been certified by the appliance. So we're looking here, and I'll just extend my column out here. We're looking for one of these SQL machines, and we see that this has been certified. Now, we could leverage a backup that was clean and passed all of the testing that we had set on the 5th or the 4th. Again, keeping in mind we want to stay away from this backup here on the 5th, indicating that, hey, this potentially could be a bad backup here, but we again have validation that we've got certified recovery points from the 4th or potentially from the 3rd that we can use to roll back from. Now, in order to meet a very aggressive recovery time objective, once that machine has been wiped and we're ready to restore that virtual instance, we're selecting our recovery point here. And let's say we want to recover to where we were just last night before any infection was detected here. You can leverage with VMware, Hyper-V, even Windows assets that have been protected with our block agent or our image agent. You can leverage instant recovery. This is going to drive a near zero RTO. You're determining the target hypervisor in which we're restoring this machine to. It could be the same host. It could be an alternate host here that we're leveraging, resource pools, and data store. The appliance network here is key as well because we're going to temporarily emulate an NFS data store, present that to the Unitrends appliance, and directly inject the data into that share. Leveraging Now, that share is our temporary data store. We contact our target location or our target host to bring the guest online, but we're leveraging our appliance resources here. So we don't need to rebuild the entire backup chain on our target storage. We've injected the data directly onto the share that's mounted to the appliance, brought our guest online, and then we'll leverage integration with storage vMotion with VMware, live migration with Hyper-V to move the location of the virtual disk to the target, but that will occur more passively in the background. Now, if you're leveraging Enterprise Plus with Unitrends, you have the data copy access and the recovery assurance engines, but for anyone out there that might be running standard or even Enterprise that doesn't have that automated testing, you can leverage audit mode. This will spin the VM up with no NICs connected. It's not going to interrupt production traffic, overwrite an existing VM, but you can test the viability of particular restore points by bringing this online in audit mode with no NICs connected. Once we've determined the recovery criteria, our location, our storage, you're simply coming over to Next, renaming the machine if you so choose, click Save, and that will initiate the recovery operation. But you can leverage that instant recovery for near zero RTOs of Windows, VMware, and Hyper-V. So we've seen the predictive alerts driven by the engine, a lot of reports and information within the Unitrends dashboard to help us find clean points of restore. The other piece here is the Unitrends Security Manager, and this is a part of our bundled promotion. The Unitrends Appliance, from a backup standpoint, is what's driving alerts and will spot the anomalies within the production data for the clients that we are protecting. With the USM piece, we're encouraging our users to go on the offensive. We're really encouraging, you want to have an active process to look for intruders, anomalies, unauthorized access, and more. Even again, thinking back to that Baltimore incident and that attack, reverse engineering of that malware indicated prior administrative level access. So with Unitrends Security Manager, you are securing servers, workstations, and the network by performing an internal threat monitoring, and this is continuously looking for malicious behavior and will alert you to those threats. Smart tags are a feature that combines machine learning and intelligent tagging to help the software learn over time. It will, as it continues to ingest and feed you reports, it will start to learn from those tags and how you're responding to them what alerts are most critical. It's grading reports on a spectrum of severity. The most high priority alerts are pushed to the top, and this will learn, again, over time. The email alerts, as we're going to see in just a moment here, have dynamic action buttons, so this is not exclusive to IT. You can certainly push these alerts to administrators, but if you've got owners or managers of other business units, sales, accounting, finance, they may know their user behavior on a more regular basis than IT does, and something like a suspicious-looking login or a new device connected to the network, you can push those alerts to business users as well, and it will integrate directly with your existing PSA, whether that's Kaseya or another particular product, to generate those tickets for remediation. So one of the alerts, for example, here is indicating that we've had a user try and access a machine that's been restricted to IT administrators only. This could be a domain controller, database, web servers, etc. So we've applied a couple of tags here. Our users are being tagged with IT admin, and this particular client has been restricted to IT administrative access only. So we can identify here the user that's trying to access that restricted system. We can kind of see what's going on here. Why is John in HR attempting to, or what looks like John in HR attempting to contact or log into our finance server at 3 in the morning? Sort of some of those, the malicious or insider threats here. Another example would be a new device that's being added to a network. We've applied the restricted network tab to a subnet, and this is an example of those dynamic action buttons, again, where you can leverage others and other managers and owners of business units that you and IT are serving to take dynamic action here. So we can indicate, yes, hey, we want to investigate this, or no, hey, we knew that Bill was bringing in his new Surface and connecting it to the laptop. So you can really start to spot some of these unauthorized activity. And it's not just limited to these two examples. You can see, unauthorized installation of applications on particular machines, new profiles being added to devices, users being given administrative rights to particular systems, even backup alerts kind of in concert with your Unitrends appliance. Hey, this particular database isn't being backed up. Different alerts, again, the patch management, this overall, this job, even beyond patch management, is such an enormous task. We're really striving to deliver tools that will help you automate and give you access to take more proactive and dynamic actions to some of these insider threats. So just a quick kind of segue on the Unitrend Security Manager. Absolutely love that tool, a really nice complement to a Unitrend's backup solution. And again, we'll alert you to some of those threats that your traditional firewall and antivirus aren't going to catch. So we mentioned when we hopped into the interface, we looked a little bit at that instant recovery, again, near zero RTO for your VMware, Hyper-V, and Windows assets. This enables through our Windows agent P2V recovery. You could recover, say, a Windows asset directly on the appliance as a VM, leverage some appliance resources. You could recover it to an available VMware or Hyper-V host to take advantage of those near zero RTOs. We had mentioned again that on appliance recovery and audit mode you can use to verify particular recovery points if you don't or aren't equipped with that data copy access testing just yet. So automating that backup certification is a function of data copy access and recovery assurance. It's going a layer beyond screenshot verification. Screenshot verification takes you as far as that login screen. Hey, the machine booted. We have no way of understanding that the data is intact, it's clean and free of malware. We've worked with users that, in coming over to Unitrends had been living in a world of screenshot verified backups, recovering from those only to find that there was ransomware contained within the backup files. In a lot of cases, ransomware isn't going to disable your boot volume or your operating system. They want you to be able to access that machine so that they can demand their extortion and hit you with that splash screen. So recovery assurance takes folks a layer deeper by enabling you to run application-specific scripts to certify the performance of backup. So we're not only tracking for compliance here. What I love about data copy access, it was actually a function from Unitrends cloud testing. If anyone out there is subscribed to our disaster recovery as a service, you'd seen the compliance and the application level reports, and it was delivering so much confidence and a layer of visibility to our users. They said, Unitrends, we would absolutely love this functionality. Is there any way you could build this into the product? And we said, well, we're happy to report that it's on the roadmap. You'll have it in our version 10 release. So in this case here, as we're building out that job, and we can give it a custom name up at the top here, we're going to certify, in this case, some of our VMware backups. So from our catalog of backups, we've got a number of systems here, and the great thing about this is not only can you simulate the testing, but you can script and build out this job to prepare for push-button failover. So if there are multiple machines or dependencies between machines, we can include multiples in this job. So we've got here Active Directory, a web server, and its SQL backend that we want to include in our testing. You'll build up a lab profile, a target host, data store, recovery network, testing network, and the appliance network here. You'll also input compliance settings from an RPO and an RTO standpoint. You'd build that out through the lab profiles here. You determine the schedule, when you want this job to run. Simply toggle on the days you want it to run, adjust start time and recurrence as necessary. And lastly is where you're going to build in those application scripts. So as part of this testing, we can define things like the boot order of these machines, reconfigure the CPU and the memory of these machines, re-IP them if necessary. Since we're testing AD first, we're going to leave it in our first boot group and come over and set a couple of tests here. Now, we've got over 50 canned application scripts that you can leverage to test different services across your applications and clients here. You can scan drives and folders for malware. You can run your own custom scripting as well. So there's a lot. The possibilities really are endless here. In the case of Active Directory, we're going to run a test to verify our NTDS database, ensure that when this machine comes up, we can authenticate and authorize our users. So we'll save out that testing here, and we're going to bring up our SQL machine second. So we'll add this into our second boot group, confirm our changes here, and come over to a couple of tests for our SQL machine. In this case, we want to test a particular service. We're going to ensure that the database engine is running, so we're going to test our MS SQL Server service. And we're also going to verify a particular instance. So as we're scrolling down to one of our ready-made SQL scripts here, we're going to certify the service of our WebDB, the web database. That's our back end to our web server here. So we save out our SQL tests. And lastly, we're going to configure the web server. We'll put this into our third boot group, confirm our changes, and we can run a couple of tests for web here. We want to test IIS, make sure that we can publish and post that website. And we're also going to run a quick ping test to make sure that it can communicate with that SQL backend. So we'll add in a quick ping test for Burlab SQL. And we've built it out. The job is ready to be saved and run as executed. Do you see how different this is than screenshot verification and the level of confidence that this can drive for our users here? The outcome of data copy access you'll find in a couple of reports. You'll also see it front and center on your dashboard here, but we can drill in. And from a compliance standpoint, we will benchmark the RPOs and the RTOs of every test. You can easily export this into a PDF or a CSV file. And we're just seeing at a glance here that, hey, we were successful. So with a goal RTO of 1 hour, our machines were spun up in anywhere from 6 to 9 minutes. With a goal RPO of 24 hours, our last backups were taken about 11.5 hours ago. So we understand from a compliance standpoint, our most recent tests are compliant. But a layer further is where we can proactively identify where there may be issues that will impede or could impact recoveries. Now, a successful test here looks something like this. We've begun that instant recovery process. We reconfigure the machines as specified. Here are the three from our testing, AD, Web, and SQL. We start to power them on. The boot groups are defined here, AD. We execute that script against the domain service. It's on and responding. We understand that that's successful. Number of other successful tests here. The instance is intact, and our web server is able to communicate with its back-end host. So we can really script and test for a number of different scenarios and use cases here. And even more importantly, I think, than some of the successful tests are the failed tests. If there were ever an issue with one of the application tests that we're running, it would be highlighted with the failure or an error message here detailing what that issue was. We just had an issue with this one where we had a timeout in the lab. We weren't able to tear down one of the instant recovery sessions here, but we're able to proactively see where there may be an issue that would impede recovery. If that AV scanner picked up signs of virus or malware, that would be identified here as well so that we could take the right remediation action. So for our users, their confidence with recovery assurance is second to none. You can drill down into more detailed reports that are exportable. You can view at a screenshot or just a glance here on our dashboard the status of these tests so that we've got, again, great standing or understanding of where we are here. So that recovery assurance not only powers that testing, you can spin up an instant lab in an isolated, that sandbox environment. In a lot of cases, we're recommending customers build out kind of a private or an isolated network, name it the sandbox. You can use that for testing, so you can spin these machines up for use by DevOps, QA, even push some patch testing before you bring that live into the environment. But also, as configured, can use that job for push-button failover. In a larger outage or disaster, we've already defined the order in which machines need to boot, the services that we need to verify. We've verified them. So when leveraging that failover from the data copy access job, it will initiate recovery as scripted from the most recent backups of the machines that are defined. So some great use cases with that recovery assurance and data copy access engine. The last piece, and I apologize, we're going just a minute over my half hour that was allotted here, is our full site disaster recovery as a service. And really excited about this offering as well. It's been, the Unitrends Cloud has been very, very popular among our customers. It was one of our most widely adopted services last year, and 3 out of every 5 cloud subscribers has at least one machine enrolled in Unitrends DRaaS. So disaster recovery as a service is what enables rapid spin up of your most mission-critical systems. And by leveraging the Unitrends Cloud, you can reduce the cost, complexity, and overhead of managing a secondary site or a DR colo. It's hands-free failover. I would demo DRaaS for you, but it would be making a phone call to our support center, and then they initiate that failover sequence. So as a part of installation and onboarding, we're defining the protected systems, the compliance requirements from recovery point and recovery time, but also mapping out what the failover environment needs to look like for you. We're defining the firewall rules, QoS settings, networking configurations, the boot order dependencies, the application scripts. We repeatedly test against this configuration, leveraging that recovery assurance so that we've got full confidence that the SLAs in which we are promising to our users are going to be met. Upon receiving that phone call and declaration, Unitrends initiates the failover and recovery of service in the Unitrends cloud. We've worked with you as part of that onboarding to define the IPsec tunnel or the SSL VPNs that you will use to help redirect user traffic to those cloud workloads. Continue to run in the Unitrends cloud while the primary site is unavailable. We're still taking backups, so we're keeping the backups up to date. We assist you with that failback as well. We're going to bulk seed the majority of the data from the Unitrends cloud onto a brand new appliance for our Recovery Series customers, onto a NAS device for our software users, overnight that to you so that you can start to begin the import and restoration of those local systems. When you are ready to complete that final local sync, we tear down the very last changes, ship that to you as well, so you perform that final sync to roll the machines forward and reroute that user traffic, start to return operations to the local site. We tear down the DR site, send you a prep kit so that we're capturing changes for future failover. And you can be flexible here. We've got 3 different SLAs based on the RTO. They are contractually guaranteed 1 hour, 24 hour, and best effort, so you can mix and match levels of service to best meet your business needs. And just one example, we onboarded a customer earlier last year, about mid-year. They're a rental service for production, audiovisual, camera equipment, so camera, lighting, staging, sound, etc. And they only needed 2 VMs in the event of a disaster. The machine powering their point of sale system and the machine that was powering the back end of their finance software. So they were fully confident in the event of a local outage that they could maintain production and continue to keep front-of-store operations open by deploying those machines and restoring them in the Unitrends cloud. So again, just a really great offering. DRaaS industry-wide is being more and more highly adopted because of the expertise of these service providers. We're thoroughly vetting that cloud environment. We adhere to the laws of data sovereignty based on the country of origin, and the cloud has met a number of rigorous compliance standards, SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, GDPR, by leveraging our AES 256-bit encryption. Certain levels of retention can help organizations maintain HIPAA compliance. It's a CGIS-compliant cloud. A lot of security and compliance standards are being met there through that service. So again, really, really fantastic. Before we turn things over to the Q&A, just a reminder on the security bundle that is special for our customers. Dark Web ID and the Unitrend Security Manager tool for just $4,500. Take advantage of that this month here. Get in touch with your account manager. They can work through with the details, provide demos, additional assistance, more resources as required if you'd like to learn a little bit more about those solutions and inquire about this offer that we have. So at this point here, Max, I'm ready for the Q&A, so I'll turn it back over to you to see if there were any questions that came in during the presentation.
Perfect. Yeah, we do have a few questions. One of the questions is from Chris, and he's mentioning the false positives and how to really deal with those false positives when he says some of his alerts were not really ransomware. So how to deal with those?
Absolutely, Chris, and it's a great question. In a lot of cases, we do want to spot that activity, but if you are being overwhelmed with false positives, we would recommend you work through with our support organization because you can adjust the threshold within the master INI. I believe the default is a 500% change or a 5x change will start to trigger an alert. If you're finding that that's a little bit too sensitive for your environment, you can work with our support organization to kind of adjust the sensitivity of that. You can also have certain machines, if there are particular VMs or particular clients that you expect to be very, very busy or they're a little bit more random in their usage, it's going to fluctuate a little bit, you can have those excluded from the detection alerts. So there are particular machines that you could exclude. You can also adjust the sensitivity through the master INI. Again, for both of those, we'd recommend that you get in touch with support. They'd be happy to walk you through where to find and how to adjust those settings so that we can reduce the amount of false positives.
Okay, perfect. And another question that we have is, does it have a test for Exchange 2010?
Exchange 2010, I would have to go in and see if we've got a particular script here. Off the top of my head, I am not 100% sure, but that is something that potentially you could use the custom scripting for as well. So I'll just hop back in here to take a look. But if you're not seeing a particular test or service that you're looking for, that's where we can leverage some of that custom scripting here. So if we're just pulling through here, we'll just grab one of our machines to include in our testing. And now I'm curious for my own knowledge as well here. So we do have some tests for Exchange 2016, Exchange 2013. So for Exchange 2010 would probably be some custom scripting that you could leverage by running your own script path and arguments here, inputting those tests in there.
Okay, perfect. So the other questions, we got two other questions here. I think we can tackle them real quick. Is the automated monitoring system part of the backup system we already have, or is this an add-on?
So the monitoring of the client data that we are creating, or that we are observing as we're creating the backup files, is native to every Unitrends appliance. So the proactive monitoring for changes within the clients is included with every appliance. The threat detection through Unitrend Security Manager, such as the unauthorized login, restricted devices, that would be through the Unitrend Security Manager tool, but the monitoring of the backup environment is included natively with every Unitrends appliance.
Perfect. So we'll tackle one more question here from Justin, and it's more of a comment. He's talking about he got a warning that a system had an anomaly detected that matches behavior or systems impacted by ransomware. And it's a computer that is an update server and only goes to Windows Update. And he mentions that he did install a vulnerability scan tool 2 weeks ago. It's more of a comment. So I think he's also referring to maybe false positives.
That again, that could be an instance of that particular machine may have been a higher rate of activity. Essentially, what the detection algorithm is looking at is it's comparing the hash values over time for some of those characteristics against the most recent backup. So today's backup compared to yesterday's and so forth here. So if there was a really heavy rate of change or a particular update or something new going on with that particular system, that could have triggered the alert. Again, we want to alert you to those anomalies. It's a probabilistic match of systems that are exhibiting symptomatic or symptoms that are indicative of a malware or a ransomware infection. But again, we're spotting for anomalies and changes to the data. Again, change rates are one indicator, the overall entropy or the Shannon entropy, the randomness of that data being another. There's a great KB as well that kind of references what Unitrends is looking at in a little bit more detail. I believe that's linked in to the presentation. And you'd also see it in the alert there. If I go back here, I believe the detection alerts will pull up, and it's, KB 5442. Details a little bit more what that monitoring tool is looking for and some of the activity that it will pick up on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I guess we can have one last question here before we go. It's from Tim. He's asking if he has a recovery appliance that copies all backup data weekly and sets itself to offline after the backup completes. So he asks, is this a good way to protect against a ransomware attack, or should he also take the drive set off-site in addition?
It sounds like, Tim, you've got a pretty robust strategy. The appliance itself is hardened against some of this malware, and for folks leveraging Unitrend's best practices, changing the root password, replicating data offsite, we've never failed to recover a customer from ransomware. I think that when we look at some of the other disasters that we may need to respond to, things like fire, flood, could impact the site as a whole, it's always a great idea to get a copy of those backups off-site or in a geographically redundant location. But as you're doing now, by having the appliance go offline, it's not consistently connected to the clients that it's protecting. A couple of great steps in kind of adding a layer of prevention or hardening yourself on top of what's kind of natively built into the system there. But we would always recommend getting a backup copy off-site in a geographically redundant location, again, in kind of a just-in-case, or if the worst were to happen.
Perfect. Yeah, this was a great presentation. In fact, we have most of the attendees still with us. And, I just wanted to thank you, Adam, for presenting this to us and, making sure everybody's aware of what they can do with the Unitrends tool in the case of a ransomware attack. So with that, we're going to let you guys go. And I just wanted to thank everybody for participating with us again. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Max. Take care, all.
Okay. Take care.